and welcome to Anaplan Live Spotlight. I'm Chris Weiss, and I run our global strategy for customer centers of excellence, including oversight of the Master Anaplanner program. In today's Spotlight event, we'll be discussing an issue at the heart of achieving connected planning, internally presenting Anaplan to new audiences within your company. A few quick notes before we start. There is a live chat to the right of the video. Use this space to post your questions for the presenters and interact with your fellow attendees. We'll work to answer your questions during the live event. If you have any technical issues while watching the event, try reloading the page. If that doesn't work, post a message in the chat and our community team will do their best to help. A recording of today's Spotlight will be posted on the community within about a day. Once it's up, you can post follow-up questions in the comment section below the video. Today, I'll be joined by Jen Wang and Yelena Keselman, both from our pre-sales solutions consulting team. Jen and Yelena give Anaplan demos every day as part of their job, most frequently when an Anaplan customer or prospect is still in the process of selecting Anaplan as their technology to solve a planning challenge. Before the three of us dive into a live discussion and Q&A on the topic, let's watch a pre-recorded video where Jen and Yelena will provide an overview of how to prepare for and deliver an amazing demo. This was recorded back in a time when we could all stand closer than 6 feet apart.
My name is Yelena Keselman, and I'm a solutions consultant here in New York City. I've been with Anaplan for 6 years.
I'm Jen Wang, and I'm a solutions consulting manager here in the New York office, and I've been with Anaplan for about 3.5 years.
Our core responsibility is to take our customers' challenges and relay them back to effective Anaplan demonstrations.
We are excited to connect with the Anaplan community to help you understand how to do an effective Anaplan demonstration.
So one of the most common questions that we get asked is, how do you effectively demonstrate Anaplan? I'm gonna give you guys 3 tips on what I like to use and frameworks that I like to leverage when I'm going about preparing for an Anaplan demonstration. The first technique is to do a tell, show, tell loop. So it's giving the audience an indication of where you're gonna go before you start demonstrating the functionality. And then the most important part, and this tends to get overlooked, is reiterating the value of what you just showed. So the second tip I'm gonna give you guys is the problem, action, resolve loop. And you can do as many of these as you want throughout a demonstration. The first is isolating a very specific business problem that you think your audience is having. And then it's actually tactically showing how you would resolve for that business problem within the Anaplan platform, and then reiterating the problem that you just resolved. So the third tip is to take a profile-based demonstration approach. This is really making it clear, what user are you personifying when you're demonstrating? So an FP&A manager might have completely different needs than the CFO or the financial analyst. And it's really your opportunity to be empathetic with your audience and be very prescriptive with the types of models that you're demonstrating and the challenges that you're meeting, depending on who is sitting in the audience. So you might be asking yourself, when am I going to need to do an Anaplan presentation? It's extremely common for us to ask our customers to lead sprint reviews and really showcase to stakeholders what they've spent time developing. Our partners are constantly demonstrating the value of Anaplan to other prospects, customers, and their peers. And really, you can take the tips that we're sharing with you today and use them for any presentation.
Another question that we commonly get is, what is something cool to show during an Anaplan demo? What really gets the crowd going? So there are 3 main things that we call aha moments within pre-sales. The first thing is to do a right-click and drill down so users can actually see how easy it is to view a formula and how easy it is to create a formula within Anaplan. The second tip is to make a change in the model so all users can actually see the change made in the model. So maintenance is actually easy to do in Anaplan. And the last tip is to build something on the fly. Show end users how easy it is to actually build a module, create lists, and build out a formula. This really shows end users how easy it is to build and maintain something in Anaplan.
Great video. So many great tips and tricks to delivering an amazing Anaplan demo and a presentation in general. Now I'd like to hand it over to Jen and Yelena.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this Spotlight event and able to answer some of your questions today.
Hey, everyone. Yelena here. I'm super looking forward to sharing the perspectives that both Jen and I have. You know, we demonstrate the platform on a very regular basis, and we look forward to sharing the things that we've learned along the way with you today. So with the video in mind, and one of the things that we wanted to start off with is just a mini demonstration to really show some of the concepts that I explained in the introduction. So what I'll start with is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Chris or Jen, this is kind of like demoing 101. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
All set. All good.
Awesome. So the first kind of tip that I provided is the concept of telling what you're going to demonstrate, showing the demo, and then reiterating the points that you've made. So for this example, I'm just going to start off with going through a tops-down target setting exercise. And this is generally done by, members of the sales operations team, sales finance, and sales leadership. And I hope to really, use this example to show you guys some of the major things that we look out for and we really try to stress when we're demonstrating. So I'm going to pivot back over. First things first, of course, always, anytime you're demoing anything on your screen, I've definitely learned this since I've been demoing digitally the last couple of months, since we're all working from home, is making sure that your screen is in full screen mode. Generally, I'll go through a little bit about, logging in. We'll kind of skip that part because I think a lot of you are familiar with that. But just know that even from the moment that you start sharing your screen, you're sending a message to the audience. So really make sure that it's very clear and very deliberate. Every single thing that you're showing, you have a point as to why you're showing it. So like I said, I'm going to start off with a tops-down planning exercise in this example. The first thing that I start when I generally pull up anything is just kind of giving the audience sort of a lay of the land. One of the unique things about Anaplan is that it is a platform. So there's a lot of configurability. There's a lot of room to play around with what the system is capable of. I think one of the biggest things that we really try to one of the biggest goals that we have when we demo isn't necessarily to show every single piece of functionality. The two key takeaways are the value that the audience in question is going to receive from the platform, and then also just giving them a sense for what is possible within the platform. So within any Anaplan demo, you really have your lists, your calculations, and your dashboards. So really giving the audience the building blocks that they need in order to really imagine the possibilities, because generally you only have maybe 30 minutes to an hour to demo. And it's, giving them the ability to walk away with what's possible versus, checking every box in terms of requirements. Really, the demo isn't designed to do that. So starting off with the tops-down planning exercise, I usually like to use a spotlight when I demonstrate. So here you'll notice I'm using something called mouse pose. Especially in a digital environment, it's really easy for your eyes. There's a lot going on the screen. It's really easy for the eyes to get lost. So I'll start off with sort of highlighting where I begin to start. So we're going to start with taking our historical sales performance, and we're using that to come up with a preliminary sales target for the year. And what I can start doing is making adjustments to the numbers themselves. So maybe for the storage product, I want to go ahead and make an override because I know that we'll be growing that product area a little bit more than we have in the past. And you'll notice one of the unique things about Anaplan, or really what makes the system more of a planning platform and separates us from things like business intelligence tools or just simple analysis tools, is the ability to speak to the platform and have it produce results in real time. Now, we kind of talked about this during the introduction. There are certain things that really are just unique about Anaplan, and we want to ensure that we highlight those throughout the demo. So what I like to start off with fairly early on in the demo is doing what we call a drill down. And the drilling into like a simple calculation really allows the audience to see the simple English syntax that we utilize to develop within Anaplan. And it allows, especially if you're discussing this with business users that really are looking for a system that they can own and manage themselves, gives them visibility into really the mechanics behind how the platform works. So you'll notice here I drill down into my preliminary target for for the storage product. And I can see that that math is simply, my sales target plus the adjustment that I just made. So it's simple things like that. I mean, I would stress maybe picking a formula that you're comfortable with explaining, but simple things like that to sort of dive under the hood and really highlight the uniqueness of Anaplan as a business-friendly planning platform. Now, as I go down, one of the things we also stress is talking to the platform, having numbers change, really having a bi-directional means of communication. So what I'll do here is I have an over-assignment driver that essentially over-assigns my targets going down various levels through the sales hierarchy. So instead of 3%, maybe I want to override at 5%. And what I can see in real time is that everything is recalculated. Now I'll keep scrolling downward. And again, you want to be extremely deliberate with the way that you're moving through it. Go slowly. If you haven't noticed already, I'm actually a pretty fast talker. So you really want to make an effort, especially if you're demonstrating in the digital world that we revolve in today. You want to take pauses. I mean, you almost want to take more pauses than you generally would, just to give people time to sort of unmute, ponder about what you've just said, and really it allows the audience to ask more thoughtful questions if you give them a little bit more room to breathe. So as I scroll down, a couple other things that are going on here. I have the ability to allocate those targets downward. So here you'll see that I'm using prior year sales as a determinant for how I push my targets down to each and every level. What we've uncovered and really the availability of information that Anaplan provides, pulling in historicals, but then combining it with more forward-looking information, things that you know about the growth of sales markets. We have predictive insights capabilities that really allow you to fine-tune potential spend for particular markets or customers. You can use a variety of methodologies to allocate those targets. And if I actually click a blended rate, this blended rate is what we're seeing most commonly in the market. It's taking historical sales, predictive sales, and combining all those factors so that you can come up with more data-driven quotas and targets down to each level. So maybe I want to downshift how much of historical sales right now. It's really difficult to forecast the future using historicals with everything that's going on. So maybe I want to adjust this to be 15%, and I'm going to uplift my predictive spend that I've come up with to 55. And again, I can see everything manipulate in real time. I can make overrides. I can put holds in place. And these are all the kind of things that we talk about when we say we're a real-time calculation engine. So, of course, I'm just one person right now maneuvering through this process. But in reality, you're going to have, upwards of tens, hundreds of people potentially contributing to the target setting process. So as these things occur in real time, everybody has visibility into what's going on. The other thing that we highlighted at the beginning, and I think is really important to any time that you're demonstrating Anaplan, this is going to be a huge plus for us, is just the ability to change things and manipulate things easily. So Jen talked about building something on the fly. So if you feel comfortable, and most of the Anaplan community, I think you guys are all in great shape to share your skills to the world. Making manipulations to some of these views during a demo might be really impactful, particularly in situations where, again, the business is looking for a tool that they can easily manage. A lot of the legacy tools out there, you're not going to be able to go into a view like this and start editing things while you're talking through the demo. So one thing I want to highlight really quick is that what I'm doing right now, this is an administrator role, so end users aren't necessarily going to be doing this, but I do think that something like this benefits both the administrator and the end user community, because it just shows the ability to adhere to changes required by the business very quickly. So just simple things like you can drag and drop anything that you see in any of these views. These views are completely configurable. I have a variety of options of the types of elements that I can add to any one of these views. So just simple things to showcase the flexibility as well as just sort of the business-friendly nature of the platform itself. And for those of you who haven't noticed already, I'm using our improved user experience. So if you haven't kind of played around with this yet, I highly recommend you do this. The new UX is awesome. There's a lot of amazing features and functionalities in here, and I definitely think we've really prioritized the end user experience in coming up with some of these views. I'm actually going to go ahead and publish this so I can save it. So what I just showed, like I said, we did a really simple tops-down planning exercise. You always want to highlight why you showed something. So it's nice to see the features and functionality, but what's more important is the impact that something like Anaplan can have. So, really ensuring that when you're performing your tops-down planning, your bottoms-up plans are also in alignment. So as we see things change in real time, leadership has the ability to sort of pivot their strategies if they think that there's a misalignment between what's going on from a tops down and what's going on at more of the field level from a bottoms up. Like I talked about, using historicals and forward-looking information for your analysis, we really don't discriminate around what types of information you can bring into the system. You can pull information from, CRM, your ERPs. We are very data agnostic, so that really allows for more of a 360-degree view of what you're pulling into Anaplan. And just saving time. I mean, at the end of the day, people want to save time and they want to save money. This is a really good opportunity if you have personal experiences. For those who are doing internal selling, if you have tangible examples that you can provide in your value statements that exemplify, time that you've saved, resources that you've saved, revenue that's been gained, or costs that have been reduced, this is a really good moment to just iterate those, because really at the end of the day, these are the things that the audience generally cares about. So the next piece that I'm going to run through is something that we identified as, or that we call the problem action resolve loop. So when you're doing a demo, it's really important that you're more so telling a story and you're not necessarily just, going in, showing drop downs, clicking on things and focusing on the features. So what has really helped me is to think through this lens where I have a problem that I need to resolve. I'm going to take action on it, and then I'm going to iterate what I just did through the resolution. So I'm going to take a bit of a pivot and go to a different example. And what's nice, of course, about Anaplan is that everything is interconnected. So what I just performed on the quota planning piece directly ties into this territory optimization view that I'm about to go into. And Anaplan really aids in allowing you to tell a story because everything is connected. So in this particular view, again, I'm still sort of focusing in on sales ops. This might be more of sales leadership now, less of sales finance. But my dilemma here is that I have some territories. And if I scroll down here, what I can see is I've got, 5 territories in front of me. I've got an idea of sort of like the range in which I want to hold each territory so that we have a balance. And the reason why we want to have a balance is when you're assigning, accounts or geographical territories to reps, generally speaking, you want to ensure that you're giving everybody an equal opportunity to succeed. And what we've got going on here is that we can see by this delineation, the variance is still a little bit high. So we've got one territory that has a lot of accounts. We've got one territory that has very little accounts. So what I can do, and here I'm combining a couple of different elements that Anaplan provides. Here what I can do is I can use some of the factors that I've already used, my total addressable market, or maybe the predictive score that I've assigned for each and every territory. And I can use that and combine it with our optimization engine. So what the optimization engine does is it allows you to take these predictive scores and reassign the account systemically in order to balance the distribution of opportunity. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and run my optimization engine. And again, while that runs, you might want to have a little talking track here talking about maybe the speed or sort of the results that you're looking to obtain through this process. And now when I scroll down, what I will see is I've got a balance here now. And really, this is kind of like the idea of I had an issue, I needed to resolve it, and I'm looking and I see that it is now resolved. And just to take it a step further, what I can do too is, not everybody's going to be using the system assigned assignments. You also want to add a layer of subjectivity to those assignments. So the system guides you and tells you sort of the preliminary of where you should begin. And then you can sort of, the manager, sales ops, whoever can go in and make their subjective reassignments. Maybe there are certain accounts that really need to be assigned based on things that we know about relationships. So it's really fusing this combination of the machine guiding you and helping you identify anomalies or things that require your attention. And then it's adding that human element, that human layer that really only people can provide around where we want things to go, how we want things to look in the final result. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope that was helpful in kind of exemplifying some of the examples instead of just talking about them, showing you some of the examples that we have and some of the things that we do from a day-to-day. I think with that, maybe we can open it up to some questions, discuss some of the stuff that we just saw.
Yeah, that's really great stuff. Thank you, Yelena. I mean, always amazing watching you live in action. I know we've gone back a few years with kind of working together here, so always great seeing you in action. I especially appreciate learning something about quota setting and territory management in the process, kind of like a demo within a demo. So we are taking some questions from the audience on the live chat. We're collecting those now. It looks like we may have received one or two. So please keep sending those in and we'll kind of tie them in with what we're doing here. And thank you, Yelena, for showing the user experience. Always great to see kind of where the platform is going, where we are thinking as a company, and how much better it is than old UX. So as we're kind of collecting some of these questions, one of the things that I hear very commonly from our customers who are starting down this journey of internal selling and doing demos is they're curious where the line is on how much model to build for an effective demo. So, people are thinking, we know that we should be building things according to DISCO and best practices. Do I build out a full DISCO'd model? Do I just build the dashboards? Kind of how do you identify that line in what the right amount of build is to do?
Jen, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll kind of jump in. So I'm going to give the answer, it depends. So it really depends on the audience and the purpose of the demo. And what they're looking for. But I would say as a general guideline, it probably is good to think through some of that DISCO, even if you don't necessarily need to build everything out. So, including identifying all the data sources, integration, input, so on and so forth. But it is good to think about it comprehensively, just so you have an understanding of that bigger picture. The goal for a demo essentially is to show an art of the possible, not a full functioning model. So that is where generally what we think about is that you don't need to fully build out that end to end. Another goal of a demo could be to demonstrate the potential of the platform, right? So if there are, you can provide an example or even talk through a process flow without needing to build everything out. So kind of going back to Yelena's description of tell, show, tell, she's not necessarily showing you everything, but she can actually describe that in a user story and actually highlight the values without actually having to build and show everything.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, super helpful, Jen. Yeah. Go ahead, Yelena. Sorry.
One of the things that I like to ask, because, again, I mean, with demonstrations, you generally don't have, the luxury of all the time in the world to come up with the build. One question I like to ask to really surface the questions or challenges that would really get a reaction from the user base and the individuals that we're trying to service is, what are sort of the high impact, maybe low hanging fruit that we can prove to you in order to, start having conversations around potentially putting Anaplan in place. Of course, the service that serves is giving you an idea of, all right, here are the must-haves. And you guys, you go through this with implementations. I did implementations for a few years. What are the must-haves and kind of prioritizing in that way. But then going back to the audience, it also kind of it encourages the audience to think about what their priorities are too. Because you'll find yourself sometimes going into conversations where, people want to see everything, right? And that's reasonable to see all the functionality. If you're, the head of a COE, you may not necessarily have time to build everything. So really asking the question, what is your biggest pain point? And maybe also thinking through the various demographics that reside within an organization, whether you have different business divisions or different geographical locations, identifying what the commonalities and discrepancies are between the two, because you might find that 80% of the population is experiencing something while only maybe 15 to 20% is experiencing another issue. So that will really help guide what you do and do not build and how far you go.
That's a really great point. And something that I kind of keep hearing you touch on, Yelena, that I think is really important for everything, presentations, internal selling, but especially demos, is kind of focusing on where you can make the most impact. But really, when you're prioritizing the impact, when you're prioritizing kind of that 80-20 rule, focusing on the things that drive the most value for the audience that you're presenting to. I think that's something that we can all do a better job of. I know that relates to far more than an Anaplan demo, but I like how you kind of keep the demos focused in that.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think Yelena and I discussed this right before we jumped on here, but a really good point to make is, have that conversation before you do that demo. So take the time to speak with your audience, understand their requirements or what they're looking for in a demo. And that kind of goes with any meeting where you're really addressing what the goal is. So trying to understand your audience, understand their requirements, what they're looking for, what are the challenges that they're looking for, and being able to address that in an effective demo is going to be important too.
I think that is like the golden point, and that's our golden rule in pre-sales. And I want everybody that's on this call to make I can't see or hear any of you guys, but to make a promise that not to go directly into demoing, that really, I think that doesn't ever really serve you nor your audience. We follow a process called the discovery process, and it is probably the most integral part of our job, is to sit down with whoever we're demonstrating to, whether it be our partners or, potential customers or existing customers. We really sit down and we listen to what they're going through, and we try to put ourselves in their shoes. And it's not until we do that we can ever think to successfully accommodate their needs. So it's understanding the problem before you try to resolve it through anything that you demonstrate is super important.
Yeah, really great point. It might sound counterintuitive for us, a technology company, to tell you to talk to your people and not go right into the platform, but I think it's a really great way to ensure success in the point of what you're trying to do, which is show somebody how a problem can be solved by a technology. So, but to kind of go in a different direction, we have a question around, specific to the dashboards and what you might show, Yelena. The question is around the personal views versus public views. Would you maybe show a personal view of a dashboard during a demo to kind of get around the only admins or only page builders can actually edit full app demos versus dashboards versus the actual personal boards?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good point to make. That is one of the, in my opinion, it's one of the best features that we've come out with in the last year or so, is just the ability to provide the end user a more curated experience. I think we really excel in leaving the flexibility up to the organization, depending on the types of roles and the needs of their users. And this just takes that a step further. And I mean, it depends on who the end users are in mind. If there is there's like a consistency in the type of information that they need to see, but there is autonomy in how they want to view it and to what level of detail they want to go. Personal saved views are great at accomplishing that. I think that is a really good point.
Great. Yeah. Super helpful, Yelena. And I agree overall, when we look at the future direction of the platform and kind of democratizing planning to everybody, I think you're right. This is one of the key features that we have. So let's talk a little bit more about demoing in the new UX. I see a few questions coming up around that, especially because it's newer, maybe less familiar to people who have probably been giving demos for a while, but not so much with the new boards. And this can go maybe Jen, I'll kind of ask you how you approach, how far you go into showing certain features like maybe forms or adding items to a list, maybe some of the actions, imports, or processes, which we know are pretty different compared to the old UX. So Jen, maybe how do you think about how much of that to show in a demo?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I hate to go back to this, but it probably depends on your audience. So let's say you have a more hands-on audience that really wants to understand how they can modify models or make changes or have a little bit more autonomy like we just spoke about. If they're looking for that, then that would be a case where I would show a little bit more of the back end of how you can actually build a page or go into a little bit more depth of how you actually build a My Page. So pulling in different modules, line items, and creating graphs and charts. So that would be for someone that requires a more hands-on experience. If I'm dealing with maybe an executive that really just wants to see something and again, it's mainly structured and there's not going to be any major changes to a dashboard or a page, then that could be a place where I emphasize on the visualization, the graphs, the charts, and alerts that we can kind of provide on a page to draw your attention to a decision. So I think it depends. So if you are looking for more model building experience, that's where I would probably show more of the actions and the boards on the page designer.
Yeah, and it might be worth noting too that there is functionality, and I think that the contrast between the experiences, although both are available, there's a reimagining a little bit of what you can do on a board that you may not necessarily, or a worksheet that you may not necessarily have been able to do in the past. So I do encourage, anybody making the transition to really take a little bit of time in understanding what all is available, like the new functionality especially. I think forms are so transformative in the way that end users interact. They're not having to, navigate between different boards or views to input information. You can really guide the user experience a little bit more, but it does require a bit more thought. And I know that our community team has been doing a tremendous job and just really making the differences and the benefits of the new user experience a little bit more apparent in guiding those transitions and the reframing of how you would set a board or worksheet up versus in Classic where we really only had one option, which was dashboards. And I'd love to hear if anybody kind of has experiences. Again, we're going to post this video and we have a pretty active community around how you've been using those things. It would be really awesome to be able to hear some of the perspectives on our forums.
Yeah, definitely something we need more of, and we're going to definitely look to the voice of our certified master Anaplanners to help us share what the future of kind of what we've unlocked is. I think you're right, Yelena. It's not necessarily just a lift and shift of your old dashboards to new boards or worksheets. It certainly can be, and you certainly, it shouldn't be a barrier to entry to it, to kind of moving to the user experience. But there's also an opportunity to rethink things here. There's kind of an opportunity to transform processes again, or even more, removing some of the limitations of the past. I'm also a huge fan of forms. I think that they kind of they're not game changers maybe from a technology perspective broadly, but from an Anaplan perspective, very big game changers. So I think it's a really great point. So kind of moving back towards the business process side of things, we have a great question from Andrew Tai, who kind of mentioned, if I'm trying to show Anaplan to another audience, to a different team within Anaplan, and maybe they have a planning use case that I'm not familiar with or don't use as much, is it okay to show Anaplan in my current use case to a different team? Or kind of how should people approach demoing Anaplan to different groups who have different use cases that I may not be familiar with?
Yeah. I can sort of kick that one off. I think that, this is a really good point. I think about this often because, there are moments where we come in, I've definitely sat in on presentations where I might not necessarily be the process expert in what I'm demonstrating. And that's where I really, feeling unsupported or feeling there might be some knowledge gaps. Think about who you have at your disposal before anything. I mean, one of the things everyone on this call, at least everybody that's a client, has a customer success business partner. And you should be leveraging that resource. And that resource may not necessarily be the subject matter expert that you're looking for, but they're the connecting point to, partners, subject matter experts that we have in our alliances team, SMEs that we have on our team. We are designated by line of business, and some of us have very rich industry experience. So always know that you have, our team at your disposal for some of these activities. But I know that's not always the case, and neither is that the case, when we do demonstrations internally. So I think going back to, and I want to iterate this point so hard because it took me a couple times to really learn how important this was, and I want to make sure that everybody on the line learns that lesson way faster than I did. Is, again, that discovery conversation is so key. And maybe having that discovery conversation in isolation with one person to begin with, so that you can really get an understanding of maybe some of the edges, the connecting points between what you do and what that person does, some of the similarities. And what it also does is build trust between you and the line of business that you're hoping to sell to. And with that activity, I mean, that then kind of creates, you have an advocate with you, you have a support system with you on the phone or in person, however you're demonstrating with you, so that you do have maybe an enhanced level of support. So that's kind of the route that I've gone, is assessing who my village is, who are the members of my village, what do they know, and what's their experience like, and then really being honest. I mean, you have to be honest with yourself, and I've had that work in my favor.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would say, kind of to add on to Yelena's point of having that conversation first, is, you can have that conversation and discuss and understand the process, the challenges, the requirements, and that helps you understand what people are looking for at that higher level. And then you understand what the value points that people are looking for as well. So again, going back to, the demo is not about showing you how a model works or how it functions. It's really about the value that it brings. So for example, if you're looking, you've benefited and by saving some time and productivity with your model, maybe it's in sales, and now you're introducing it into finance. That's a shared value that, the whole company can have. And that's not something that's just individual to kind of your own model. So kind of bubbling it up to that higher level to really capture the value that you're receiving. Another great process is, and again, many of you great Anaplanners have the ability to listen to a process and actually connect dots together and be able to showcase why there's a connection. So for example, Yelena in her demo showed tops down target setting for sales and quota. And maybe someone I'm talking to in finance is talking about allocations. Well, even though those are two separate processes, that process of, taking a high level number and cascading it down to lower levels, very similar concept. So again, it's kind of taking it past the functionality, but really to the process and the value that your audience can really gather.
Yeah,
Jen, that's such a great point. Go ahead. Sorry, Yelena. Oh,
I was just going to say, just one tidbit is that is such a great point around, never feel this pressure to, I don't think there needs to be any, you have enough of a support system, in my opinion, between, our alliances team and our pre-sales team, our CS team, that you should never feel this pressure to completely mimic and replicate a process that you don't feel comfortable with. Use what you know. So, if you feel comfortable speaking to tops down planning, then maybe that's the route. And really your goal isn't necessarily to replicate the process. It's to come up with a meaningful bridge, whether that be an explanation, a diagram of the similarities and why they would be of value to this organization. Most people really care about, there's not too many things that people care about. People care about saving time. They care about saving money. They care about uncovering information that they didn't have access to before. I I've realized this now, having the opportunity of working with customers across multiple business functions, that challenges remain pretty constant. It's just the context that you're putting them in. So, always think of it, everybody's kind of going through similar things as you. Makes it easier to talk about.
Yeah, it's not as different as you may think. But Jen, I really like your point around kind of, if you are already using Anaplan, you probably already hold a lot of the keys to a lot of these pieces, more keys than maybe you're giving yourself credit for, definitely more pieces of the puzzle than the other team think that you have, whether that's around your ability to model and plan data more actively, or it could literally just be that you have the data that they don't have. So, or you can kind of see the connection points of data. I think that's a really great point. One of our Master Anaplanners of the Year used to put it, Evan Sunderman, used to put it as, I have a Swiss Army knife. I have all of the tools that I need. Nobody even knows that I have access to all of this stuff. So when I'm going to solve a problem, even if I don't understand the full problem, as well as somebody whose job it really is to know the problem, I do have a lot more tools to bring to the table than maybe they're aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
And I think, going back, Yelena, to your point around the kind of leaning on the broader ecosystem, we're at a great point in the ecosystem. Nobody's kind of going it on their own. You brought up some great examples of resources to help. I'll also point out, there's lots of videos. You can kind of add your context to demo videos that have already been made. Also, lean on your peer companies, the people in your communities who are kind of working on those use cases that you might know through the Anaplan ecosystem, whether it's a user group or the community in general. There's lots of other people who can help you. Definitely tag us, and if we can help, tag in your partners if they can help do a demo. These are things that we're familiar with, but you're certainly not alone. Lean on the rest of the broader ecosystem. So maybe along those lines, Jen, what do you think is the right time to tag in your team or tag in us, Anaplan, especially pre-sales, to do a demo, versus when should somebody within a COE or a customer do the demo on their own, or kind of, not ask for help?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, if you're comfortable, absolutely. I think, again, taking that same concept and theory of bubbling it up to that higher level and really selling on more of a platform concept is going to be key. But, if there's any case where you're unfamiliar or uncomfortable with the use case, I think I would refer back to Yelena's response of, reach out to your business partner. We're a team together. We're an Anaplan family, right? So if you do need the help, we're here and available. So I would say the first step would be maybe to reach out to your customer success business partner, and then we can kind of come together as a village to figure out what makes the most sense. Yeah, and I would say generally it's going to be comfort level and familiarity. And then, hey, if it's a bigger concept or more complex concept, that's absolutely something our team can help you with.
Yeah, it's definitely, like the partnership, it's never one or the other, right? There can be we can take a hybrid approach as far as who leads the demo, who maybe plays more of a coaching role. There's nothing that makes us happier at Anaplan than watching our own customers and our partners lead their own initiatives. I think that's a goal and something that we aspire to. I think our most successful customers are the ones that can take the platform and really use it to their advantage independently. But know that we're here to support you, of course. Your organization best, right? So the dynamics, the relationships. So if you, strongly believe that, having somebody internally showcase the platform will resonate more, or just because you understand the process better than anybody else can learn in a week's time span, we will certainly accommodate that. And, we can take on maybe more of a coaching role and getting you prepared for that presentation. I think that's something that I personally, I love doing that. So, know that that's available, and it's not a black or white answer. It's whatever seems right for the given situation.
Yeah, we certainly don't see ourselves as holding the keys to being the people who should give the demo. We totally agree. You all know best. what should be shown and what the conversation should be, and we're happy to help in whatever end of the spectrum that might look like. So moving on to another question that I get here pretty often that I think you've both covered a little bit of. Yelena, maybe for you to take a first stab at, what are some of the biggest oohs and ahs that you get when giving an Anaplan demo?
Yeah, this is a good one. And again, I feel like it's transformed a little bit with the enhanced user experience. I mean, I definitely think, going back to the couple of things that, not to be repetitive, but going back to the couple of things that I showed, definitely iterating the point of flexibility. And again, the goal really for me most of the time going into a demo is, of course, for the business to see what their business process could look like, but it really is to give them an idea of what the building blocks are and allow them to use their imagination. So, things like doing a small build on the fly, just to show them how quick and agile the platform is, generally resonates really well. Taking more of like a profile-based approach, I think, is always nice, showing kind of the ease of the user access, how you can manipulate roles at the click of a button. You can change access to certain pieces of the organization rather quickly. And then of course, really anything that you can show, the calculation engine, it's super fast. So anything where you can do like what if analysis is always a good one, because you can just ask the system questions. And again, I always say it's like, have a conversation with the platform. Don't have it be just like a one directional experience. I think that always resonates very well, especially when you're in a situation where you're having to run processes, to get an answer, because that's just at this point in time, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think a lot of times, for those of us that understand and know Anaplan, doing that real-time what-if analysis or making a change to an input and seeing that flow across in real time sometimes can be taken as a given. And a lot of times it may take that extra step of verbalizing what exactly is happening. It may look like this dashboard is just updating on its own, but I feel like the aha moment really comes when you describe what's actually happening. So it's not just this dashboard that you're looking at. It's all the relevant calculations that are happening all at once, and also aggregating all the way up to either total company, total product, all in a split second, which is extremely powerful. And the way that I worked with a lot of planning platforms, no other tool out there actually can do that. And what you'll also see is that a lot of us really believe in that power and that value. So that excitement and that passion definitely comes out. Another pretty cool tip to show could be along the lines of what if analysis is a bulk copy. It's pretty powerful to be able to take all your data from, let's say, your forecast 1 version to your final version in literally a split second, which is really, really impactful. And that's not just the data being copied over, but it's all the calculations, all the dashboards, all the forms, all the actions, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think another good one too, and really it just depends on, you have to have an understanding of where your audience is coming from, like what has their experience been to date. And oftentimes we're speaking with individuals who are primarily working in Excel. And we know that in Excel, if you have to make a mass update to even, let's say, like there's a new product in place, and you have to make sure that trickles down everywhere you're utilizing that in the math. Making it simple. It sounds simple when you've worked in Anaplan for a while, but making a simple change to a hierarchy, a relabeling, adding to a hierarchy, moving parent-child relationships, and then just being able to show that across maybe 2 or 3 separate views, that generally gets a good, especially from Excel users, that gets a good, healthy head nod.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I like all of the live updates of the system. I think are usually the biggest crowd pleasers, but I still appreciate both of you kind of taking us back to the purpose of the value of why you're using a planning platform and not focusing on the Anaplan is pretty, or Anaplan looks nice. I will say years and years and years ago, when I joined probably too many years ago now, when I joined the ecosystem, watching waterfall charts update when you kind of change stuff in a cell, that blew my mind. And this was many years ago. We didn't even have, technology back then, so Stone Ages, but so I think we're running low on questions. We're also running low on time. Jen or Yelena, any other last things you want to share before I kind of wrap things up?
So, I mean, we've been in this remote world for the last couple months. So these are more tactical tips that we've learned, especially since we're all meeting on a screen share, is really the first thing is joining early to test your bandwidth, which we absolutely did for this session. Because you're showing a model and you are showing our cloud platform, it's just making sure that your bandwidth is appropriate and that you're able to show that real-time calculation in a live meeting. As Yelena had mentioned before, it's definitely taking pauses. Sometimes it's very powerful and you're showing a lot of content at once. So taking a pause, having people have a second to digest and then maybe ask questions is going to be extremely important. And then the mouse pose, and then what Yelena mentioned about the tell, show, tell is going to be really, really important as well. Again, everything's digital, so it is hard to kind of draw people's attention to a specific area within the dashboard or highlight what you're talking about. So kind of just prefacing that and utilizing tools like mouse pose can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, those are all really good tips. Those are things that I try to practice. I mean, if I can add anything on as far as like last thoughts, I mean, I think really the goal of this was really just to get a sense for, you know, what our team does, know that you have like an additional team and type of resource to kind of look to as you're going through your Anaplan journey. You know, we'll try and stay engaged, of course, in like any follow-up forums or questions that you guys might have as a result of this. But again, just know that Jen and I are just representations of a larger team that is here to sort of help you navigate and really coach you through the journey of Anaplan when it comes to really presenting and helping your organization, helping you sell people on the value, whatever it need be. And maybe just clarifying what we do, because I think sometimes people don't know. So hopefully this was a nice window into it. I want to thank
this is so great. And both of, and you both are such great representations of your team, of course. So thank you for taking your time here today. Thank you everybody for sending in your questions and for kind of, you know, teeing us up with things that would be helpful for you. We truly believe that the ability to articulate the value and benefits of Anaplan are critical to achieving connected planning within your company. So we want to do everything we can to help enable you to successfully deliver those messages, since you are absolutely the right people to begin those conversations. One other point, while we covered the technology piece of this puzzle in today's spotlight, there's also a business process piece that's important to address, you know, that connected planning piece around a demo, not necessarily a technical demo. So to help you learn more around how to talk about the benefits of connected planning, especially with other executives beyond your current executive sponsor, we'll post a link to a recent video on Whiteboard that should help with crafting that business justification, the value narrative, and kind of talking about connected planning, not logged into the actual Anaplan platform. So huge thanks to Jen and Yelena for giving their time and expertise to help educate our community members. As always, thank you for your contributions. Huge thank you to the community team for putting together this series and continuing to find ways to get all of these experts in front of the rest of the Anaplan ecosystem. And if you are watching this recorded event after the show, you can post your questions below the video. We'll work to get them answered. We look forward to seeing you all on our next Spotlight event. And in the meantime, we'll see you in Unity. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.